We all know about crappy licensed games, right? You know the ones. Video games based on already existing properties like movies or TV shows that are almost always poorly slapped together by some random cheap developer for the sake of a quick buck. Those games? These crappy licensed games become rather infamous to the gaming community for how broken they often are and how little their developers usually care about the final product. Among all these piles of crap, however, there are a few random diamonds in the rough. Games that were made by people who actually wanted their players to have a great time immersed in whatever world they were converting into video game format. Today, we're going to be looking at a rare example of one of those fantastic licensed games, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Before we get too far into this video, I want to make a quick shout out to Loopy Longplace for letting me use their footage for this video. Thanks, Loopy Longplace. Alright, back to the video. Developed by Heavy Iron Studios for the PS2, Classic Xbox, and GameCube in the time when SpongeBob was in his prime before the first movie, this game was made by SpongeBob fans for SpongeBob fans. From Easter eggs and references to classic episodes, to a fantastic original soundtrack that easily sounds like it would fit in perfectly with the actual show, all throughout the game you could tell that the people over at Heavy Iron knew what they were doing and were having an absolute blast making it. The story is a rather simple one that could easily fit in with the original 3 seasons of SpongeBob. Plankton is hatching his newest plan to get the Krabby Patty secret formula. He creates an army of robots with his Duplicatotron 3000! With the intention of being their leader in an attempt to attack the Krusty Krab and steal the secret formula. Unfortunately for him, he leaves the lever set to Don't Obey, which, as someone who's currently studying robotics in college myself, why would you even include that lever to begin with?
Why do we even have that lever?
So with the robots set to be rogue, they drive Plankton out of the chum bucket and the machine is left on to infinitely spawn more robots. Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick are playing with toy robots. They wish they had real robots to play with, so they put the toy robot into Patrick's magic wishing shell, not to be confused with the magic conch shell, and wish for real robots.
Oh, okay, is the magic wishing word?
It used to be Alakazama Alabala Wiesna Tikitana Fushbar Griddle Bits von Wiederschnauzer, but I kept forgetting it.
Well, that just happened. So they go to bed and wake up expecting to find robots, and instead SpongeBob finds his house completely vandalized. This is where the game's tutorial starts. You'll notice this game has an interesting artistic choice. The show itself is 2D hand-drawn animation, with the first 3 seasons especially having a very sketched look to them, both in the backgrounds and in character animation. This game uses hand-drawn sketched aesthetic for the textures, but not for the character models themselves. These character models aren't terrible by any means though. I've definitely seen much, much worse attempts at translating SpongeBob to 3D, so I'm happy with what we got in this game. This game is a 3D collectathon platformer akin to Mario 64, as was the normal video games in the early 2000s. You collect 4 things. First, there's what appear to be flowers, but they're actually called shiny objects. As for why they didn't just use coins, I have no idea, but hey, at least shiny objects does sound like something SpongeBob would collect. Then you have golden spatulas, which is one of the many, many references to the show. These are the main objectives akin to Mario's Power Stars or Banjo-Kazooie's Jiggies. Then you also have Patrick's lost socks that you turn into him 10 at a time for another golden spatula. Finally, each individual level has its own special collectible that you have to get a certain number of to get more golden spatulas, much like the red coins from Mario 64. You have your standard 3D platformer moveset: a jump, a double jump, a ground pound, and a spin attack. You also have a jump attack, but it's a very situational move that's almost always exclusively used for hitting switches and taking out a few annoying enemies. You get more moves as you defeat the game's big 2 bosses, but we'll get back to those later. Once you collect your first golden spatula, you head outside into Bikini Bottom, where you have taxi stops to various locations taken directly from the show. Namely, Jellyfish Fields, downtown Bikini Bottom, and Goo Lagoon, each unlocked with a different number of spatulas. There's also a few NPCs you could talk to in the main hub world, all of which come from the show, and they all act completely in character. You start out with 3 hit points, akin to Zelda, but as you explore the hub world you can find a total of 3 more hit points, 1 for each area you unlock as you play. Also, your health is SpongeBob Square underwear, and the health upgrades are golden underwear.
I'm wearing 3 pairs of underwear right now.
Yes, it's an homage to that one quick throwaway gag. That's another of the many, many things that show the developers knew the show really well and wanted to pay homage to it the best way they could. This is also one of the funniest games I have ever played. As the cutscenes play out, despite the 3D art style, it really feels like you're watching an episode of classic SpongeBob. The character interactions are on point and get legitimate chuckles out of me.
Maybe this day won't be mine. Or the next. Or possibly even the next. Or 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 the next after that. But the one after the next, after the next, after the next, after that. Well, that one after that, right next to that one, That will be my day!
Sorry, Mermaid Man. It's just that I'm always so excited to see you two. Standing in your awesome presence gives me the chills of justice. See? I've got goosebumps on my goosebumps on my goosebumps on my goosebumps on my...
All right, kid. Knock it off. Just tell us what you want.
Well, I really want a new pair of sunglasses. Patrick sat on my old ones.
That's not what I meant.
Oh, so I'm dreaming. Well, then first thing I'm gonna do is dream myself up a mustache. Ow! Thanks, Gary. It does make me look more rugged, doesn't it?
As you progress through the first few areas, you find a good number of robot enemies. From the standard pawns, to these little bomb guys that look shockingly like BB-8 from the newest Star Wars trilogy, to robots that spawn thunderclouds, to robots that throw missiles at you, and robots that wield giant hammers, among other things. And yes, their hammers are giant chunks of ham. Puns! I really love seeing how much diversity there is in the enemy design. A lot of games of this manner tend to have a very limited number of enemies that they recycle over and over again all throughout the game. So to see Heavy Iron go above and beyond with tons of different enemies, all with different strategies needed to kill them, really puts a smile on my face. The enemy diversity only gets better as you get deeper into the game too. You've probably noticed all the random tikis lying around by now. They're not just for aesthetic purposes, you can actually interact with them. Some provide extra platforms, some hide secrets behind them, and all of them give you a fair number of shiny objects when you destroy them. Much like the robots, the tikis also come in a wide variety, all with their own unique quirks. Most just sit around, some explode, some shrink away if you don't sneak up on them, some are indestructible, aside from the exploding ones, and some float. Many times throughout the game, you'll find a small bundle of various tikis and you have to find the optimal way to kill them to get the most shiny objects. Level design! Another interesting thing to note here is that whenever you collect a new spatula, you don't get booted from the level like in Mario 64 or Sunshine. Rather, you save and move on, more akin to Mario Odyssey. Just a nice little tidbit I felt like pointing out. On a related note, this game actually has a fast travel mechanic. No matter where you are in the game, you can pause and select another mission you've been assigned to from any other level you've been and can instantly warp there, completely avoiding the middleman of finding the level entrance and going through the hub world again. This mechanic saved me a ton of time, both as a kid and during my college replay. Now seems like a good time to mention the fact that you don't just play as SpongeBob in this game. You actually have 3 characters to choose from: SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy. Going off of Sonic Heroes logic, SpongeBob is the speed type, Patrick is the power type, and Sandy is the flying type. Patrick can pick up various items like tikis and fruits and stunned enemies and throw them to both solve puzzles and for combat. Sandy, meanwhile, has her trusty cowgirl lasso that allows her to swing on specially marked Texas icons, as well as pull enemies closer to her to attack them. And she can even glide using it. Don't ask me how that's possible, it's just SpongeBob logic. Small detail, but each character even has their own sliding animations. SpongeBob slides on his giant tongue, another of the innumerable references to the show, Patrick slides on his back, and Sandy slides on a clamshell. Each level allows you to switch between 2 of the 3 characters using bus stops. Obviously, you can play as SpongeBob in every level, so Patrick only appears in some levels, and Sandy only appears in the others. This was actually a really good idea on the developers' part, because it allowed them to design the levels around the abilities of only 2 of the characters, rather than all 3, making for some really fantastic level design that allows Patrick and Sandy to really shine when they need to. Once you've collected enough spatulas, you fight the first boss, a giant robot Sandy that you fight as SpongeBob and Patrick. Can I just say, this may be a kid's game, but holy Miltank, this game's bosses are nightmare fuel. Seeing this thing slowly walking towards me with that cold, dead stare absolutely terrified me as a kid. I was eventually able to get past the next area, when I convinced my older sister to fight the thing for me. The fight itself isn't too terribly hard, but look, it takes place in the Poseidon, the same area where SpongeBob had that patty making contest against King Neptune. Also, every time something happens in a boss fight, a realistic fish head pops on the screen and gives commentary, just like in the show. Wow, the attention to detail just never ends! Once you beat the boss, you get another gold spatula, unlock the second area of the hub, and get a new ability, the Bubble Bowl. The Bubble Bowl allows you to hit switches and take out enemies from a distance. But it is a very situational move, and I almost never found myself using it when it wasn't necessary. In the second area of the hub, you get Shady Shoals, and by extension the Mermalair, Rock Bottom, and Sand Mountain. Sand Mountain is a bunch of slide challenges, Rock Bottom introduces more nightmare-fueled robots, and the Mermalair has music that totally isn't the Adam West Batman theme. From here on, it's more of the same, just in new areas. Explore the areas, kill robots, find spatulas, find more Easter eggs to the show, and get enough spatulas to reach the third area of the hub. The second big boss you fight is a giant robot Patrick who's taken up residence in the industrial park, another really obscure area that only appeared in one episode of the show. You fight him as SpongeBob and Sandy, and it's a pretty challenging fight, especially with the conveyor belt throwing off your jumps. This robot is certainly more expressive than the Sandy robot, but to childhood me, it was just as terrifying. Actually, nowadays, it's even more terrifying than the Sandy robot because of how scary accurate it is to the expressions of the real Patrick. Also, when you kill it, it screams exactly like Patrick does. After that nightmare fuel, you get the last of your bubble abilities, the Cruise Bubble. It spawns a fully controllable missile that you can use to attack enemies from very far away. It's by far my favorite ability in the game. As a kid, the inverted Y-axis always threw me off, but after playing games like Star Fox 64 and Star Wars Rogue Squadron, both on N64, it wasn't really a problem for me in my college replay. In the final area of the hub, you get the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, the Kelp Forest, and SpongeBob's Dream. What? Yeah, somehow robots manage to get into all the characters' dreams, and you have to travel through this Mario Sunshine secret area to get to them. This is actually another reference, this time to one of my favorite classic episodes, where SpongeBob leaves his own dream and goes into all of his friends' dreams and ruins them. Each different character has a different dream relating to them, each one being a mini-level that tests your abilities of the game. Mr. Krabs' dream is a combat challenge, Squidward's is a platforming challenge, Sandy's is a sliding challenge, and Patrick's is... nothing. It's just a dark void that goes on forever until he just gives you a spatula. Believe it or not, that's actually another reference to the show, this time to the same dream episode I just mentioned, so I'm glad they made even more consistency with the show. The other two areas are just really hard levels that frankly aren't all that fun. Dutchman's Graveyard is just a bunch of platforming, combat, and puzzle challenges, nothing new there. Kelp Forest is this game's Hazy Maze Cave. If you don't know what you're doing, and most of the time I don't, you'll just be stuck going in circles. Such a shame the best and most memorable level in the game, the Dream, is grouped together with two of the worst and most forgettable levels. Oh, I almost forgot to mention this game's one power-up. Yes, I said one. There's a power-up you can get in a few select places, including the hub, called the Sponge Ball, that turns SpongeBob into a ball that rolls around much faster than he normally runs. It doesn't control all that great though, especially around tight turns, so I usually avoid it when I can, but it is necessary for a couple random spatulas. Once you get 75 spatulas, you gain access to the Chum Bucket's kitchen, and finally fight the final boss, a giant robot SpongeBob, assisted by a giant robot Plankton. There's a cutscene that reveals, gasp, Plankton was the one behind the robots all along. Yeah, apparently throughout the game everyone, including SpongeBob, was blaming SpongeBob for the robots all because of the wish from the start of the game. Wow, the people of Bikini Bottom are idiots. Anyway, the final boss is amazing, but also terrifying. Seriously, what is it with this children's game and nightmare-inducing robots? Anyway, it actually has two phases, each with their own golden spatulas. In the first phase, you're on a ring of platforms around the Robo-Bob, and it attacks you with its karate gloves. You'll never guess what that's a reference to. Every time it attacks, you get an opening to hit one of the weak spots with the Cruise Bubble. Trust me, it's a lot harder than it looks, especially with Roboplankton shooting you with a laser sometimes. Once you finish that phase, you then travel into the robot and finish it off from the inside amongst miniature enemy gauntlets and Roboplankton shooting laser at you once again. Play it for yourself, my description doesn't do it justice at all. This is an amazing final boss, and you have to experience it firsthand. Once you defeat the boss, the last cutscene plays and the credits roll. During the credits, you're in SpongeBob form inside a skate park sort of thing. That's actually a nice little fun way to end off the game. And that was SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. My gosh, it is such an underrated gem. The controls are tight, the characters are great with their individual abilities, the Easter eggs and other references to the show are all over the place and always on point, the collectathon elements are fantastic, and it's easily the greatest licensed game I've ever played. Yes, even greater than any LEGO game. For a final conclusion, if you're a SpongeBob fan and you like collectathon platformers, this game is definitely the one for you. Pick it up if you get the chance. Rolling around at the speed of sound, got places to go, gotta follow my rainbow. Can't stick around, have to keep moving on. Guess what lies ahead, only one way to find out. Must keep on moving ahead.